much. Thank you, Chris and Claude. I feel bad since my company trains Claude that Claude should say nice things about me. I don't know. That seems strange to me. Thank you for being here. This is great. This is a beautiful venue, and so I hope you guys are having fun. I obviously have to start these remarks with a story about my Morehead-Cain finals weekend. I interviewed in October 2000 when we actually used to do the interviews in the fall. And I fell head over heels in love with Carolina. I'm from Tennessee, so I didn't know a lot of people who went here, just absolutely loved it. And that was actually no pun intended with falling head over heels in love with Carolina. I flew back to Nashville the next morning, and I dropped by my principal's office at my high school. And I just dropped in to thank him for nominating me. I told him it was an incredible honor, but I let him know that sadly I had not gotten the scholarship. And he looked surprised. He said, "Wow, that was fast. They've already told you?" I said, "No, decisions come out Thursday, but there's no way I won the scholarship." I was by far the least impressive person at that weekend. And he kind of laughed, and he said, "Okay, just call me when the decisions come out." And so 25 years later, here I am speaking to you all. I've been doing interviews of finalists for about a decade, and actually my second time to speak to finalists in some way. And I will admit that, the imposter syndrome I felt 25 years ago, I still feel today speaking to you as an alum. I was telling David Greer, who's on the staff of the foundation, just last December, I literally, I'm not exaggerating this at all, when I walk up the stairs to the Morehead Foundation office today, I still get a knot in my stomach. Like, am I sure I'm worthy of this? It's just that special a program. And I will tell you, as my first message to you are all supposed to be here. The foundation is very good at this selection. You were meant to be finalists. And so if any of you happen to be feeling that imposter syndrome that I did 25 years ago, trust me, you're supposed to be here. And if you think you were nervous talking to 3 alumni panel interviewers this weekend, think how nervous I feel talking to 180 of you who are much more impressive than I was coming through here 25 years ago. So give me a break. I hope you will. You see, the foundation scours North Carolina, the US, Canada, the UK, and increasingly much of the world to find the raw material, the embers, the early sparks of young leaders. That is you all. You all are leaders. You are all going to be leaders, whether you end up with the Morehead-Cain or not. That's why you are here. What the Morehead-Cain and Carolina then do is give you the kindling, the wood, the structure, and really the gasoline to grow your leadership fire to be as large and impactful as possible. And just a quick, I think critically important side note on what is leadership. Leadership is not having a fancy executive title or managing a lot of people, being the best on a sports team, the president of this or that, having the best grades, making the most money. Leadership is a choice. It's a behavior, regardless of role or title. It's a decision to live a life of impact, grounded in convictions and integrity, driven towards some vision for a better future, be it for one's family, community, workplace, industry, country, or global issue. Outside of my blind and completely unearned luck of being born to 2 wonderful public servant parents, getting the Morehead-Cain was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Simply put, the Morehead-Cain and Carolina, and it really is hard for me to distinguish those two because the experience is so interwoven, changed the trajectory of my life. Carolina and the Morehead-Cain gave me an education, both in and outside of the classroom, a kit of leadership tools, a string of doors opened to new opportunities, and a community of really inspiring peers and alumni who informed and modeled the kinds of decisions I would go on to make in my life and career. Let me give you one example. Being a Morehead-Cain in Carolina, taking risk felt more than just safe and encouraged. It felt like an expectation. And these aren't just risks for risk's sake, of course, but rather the risk to take paths less traveled, whether it's your passions, your convictions, or your instincts are telling you to go. I arrived at Carolina in August 2001, with an interest in international relations, public service, and generally making some positive impact in the world with what I had been given. For my Morehead-Cain summer experience after freshman year, I landed in a small city in China called Yantai to teach English. The exposure to China at this age, still very much a developing country in 2002, but rapidly evolving and growing on the world stage, put me on a completely life and career trajectory. My time in China seeded both a conviction that, one, China was just really fascinating to me, and I wanted to keep studying it, and 2, that the US-China relationship was quite possibly going to shape the trajectory of the 21st century. So I went all in. I came back to Carolina for my sophomore year. I changed my second major to Asian Studies, began studying Mandarin. I eventually moved to China after graduation without a job, actually. I eventually landed at the US Embassy in Beijing as a political analyst and had these unreal experiences that then unlocked opportunities to attend a graduate school that I didn't think I'd ever get into. And my time in that graduate school in Silicon Valley then unlocked a really fun and fascinating set of experiences that I've been lucky to have in technology. And I can trace each of these opportunities back to my summer experience advisor, Eric David, telling me, hey, given your interest, you might want to go teach English in China. And I signed up. And it wasn't just obviously the act of getting the scholarship that opened us up, but it was this positive reinforcement of the Morehead-Cain and Carolina being built into me at that age, that when I took risks, when I followed some passion or conviction, I wouldn't regret it. And rather, in some cases, not all, but most cases, I'd be rewarded for it. In addition to unlocking these doors for incredible life and learning experiences, the Morehead-Cain and Carolina experiences build out the foundations of future leadership in all of us. It taught me how to listen, empathize, and be curious about people of all different backgrounds. A big public university in America like Carolina just has everything. It has every kind of person, every kind of school, from every kind of country, with every kind of interest. On top of the experience on campus, the Morehead-Cain pushes the bounds of your comfort zones in the summer experiences, from outdoor leadership to civic collaboration, putting you shoulder to shoulder with the people, communities, and just angles and corners of the world a leader should be aware of in the 21st century. It taught me how to think. Crucially, it gave me the solitude to think. Morehead-Cains travel a lot. You've probably got a sense of that this weekend. And whether it was a 3-day solo, an hour bound in Montana, 38 hours of flights to New Zealand, where I studied abroad my junior year, and days, literally days, of slow trains across China, where I traveled from Beijing all the way to the China-Pakistan border and back, sometimes buses, sometimes trains, and all without smartphones or TikTok, mind you. So I had a lot of time to stare out of windows, read, write, and just plain think. And I think that quiet thinking is where you build a lot of the independent beliefs and convictions that are the foundation of leadership. It also taught me how to laugh. Carolina's really fun. People at Carolina are really fun. This is a fun place. One of the things that's so special about Carolina and the Morehead-Cain culture is that people here are, while they're wildly impressive, they take their work and their responsibilities very seriously. They don't take themselves seriously. And I think that's a great lesson in leadership too, because the best leaders are the ones that aren't doing it for themselves, they're doing it for the mission. They put the mission and the impact ahead of themselves. And I've always loved that about the Carolina culture. Lastly, it taught me how important it is to care, not just about the outcomes and the craft of your work, to truly pursue excellence, but also to care and even love the people you work with and lead. This is an area where I continue to be guided and inspired by the Morehead-Cain community, even today, 20 years after my graduation, and I'll give you another example, a very personal example. Last year, my family unfortunately suffered a unique and rare tragedy, a kind of loss that very few can relate to unless they've experienced something similar. Megan Mizaki, who's a longtime leader at the foundation, who just retired 2 months ago, actually, had the courage and confidence and sense of leadership to reach out to me, not just with condolences, but also to suggest that I maybe connect with a Morehead cousin who graduated about a decade before me, who had experienced something very similar. That Morehead cousin, in turn, found time to talk with me within 24 hours of emailing him, while among a very busy schedule of running embassy operations on the other side of the world. His support, his care, his leadership was a lifeline to me. It helped me be a better husband, a better father, and yes, a better leader within my family during the hardest year of our lives. Great leaders care, and the Carolina community of leaders cares deeply. This cousin, his name is Ben, he's actually on the staff of the foundation now, and the foundation is just so lucky to have him mentoring scholars like yourselves, and finalists like yourselves. So what does this all mean for you and your generation? Gen Z, you're Gen Z, right? The TikTok generation. I would hypothesize that your generation is going to have a lot more in common with my generation than might meet the eye. And I'll tell you why. So for my generation, the September 11th, 2001 attacks on the World Trade Centers and the Pentagon actually happened our third week of school. So really defined our freshman year and really changed the trajectory of history in which we continued on for our adult lives up until today. Our world changed that day and has not been the same since. On top of the geopolitical shockwaves and implications that event obviously sent across the globe, also trends of globalization that were accelerating, technologies like the internet were turning industries, legacy companies, jobs, media, economies, and in many places politics upside down. We are still grappling with some of the ripple effects of these changes over the last 2 decades. And amidst these changes, my career since leaving Carolina, as Chris mentioned, has revolved really around 3 geographies and 3 corresponding domains: China and U.S.-China relations, Silicon Valley, where world-changing technologies are rapidly being developed and disseminated, and Tennessee, where I grew up and am now raising a family, and where one can witness firsthand on the ground the kind of real-world consequences of some of these global forces. And from where I sit at the nexus of some of these macro trends and look at your generation, I think the risk of a pretty messy decade or 2 ahead is quite high. The international rules-based order that has maintained peace and global trade since World War II is in some ways coming undone, or is at least in question. The 2 largest economies and militaries in the world seem to be preparing for war. Here in the US, across Europe, we appear to be in the midst of some pretty significant political realignments. Risks of instability and change such as these are then compounded by the introductions of new technologies like artificial intelligence. And AI, as many of you I'm sure know, is a transformative general-purpose technology. It's like electricity. It can bring untold benefits to fields like scientific development, healthcare, education, and new forms of commerce. There's so much to be optimistic and hopeful for. But the rapid advancement also introduces tremendous risks for economic, geopolitical, and societal instability. And so, from a personal perspective, it's those same instincts and convictions, appetite for risk, impact that Morehead-Cain in Carolina cultivated in me to study in China over 2 decades ago that drove me to leave a pretty comfortable job at a payments company to join a small, largely unknown AI safety lab 2 years ago called Anthropic. And my gut, and I make these predictions with very high humility, no one can predict the future, could be completely wrong. If you're taping this, you can tell me when I'm wrong years from now. But my gut is that the generation you're in will face some of the most complex challenges and opportunities in a century. So times like these desperately crave and need good leaders, effective leaders, leaders of character, integrity, and skill, leaders who listen, leaders who are curious, leaders who think for themselves, who have informed, battle-tested, pressure-tested points of view and conviction, who care about people, their work, and the world around them, and leaders who through it all can laugh at themselves. Leaders, we hope, like you. I'm thankful we have Carolina and the Morehead-Cain program in a world like this. I only wish we had more of it. Now, before jumping into Q&A, so you get to interview me now, which I hope feels good for those who I interviewed earlier today. I'll acknowledge and maybe even just apologize. I'm not really giving you advice. I'm not meaning to scare you either, but I'm just kind of giving you a charge and an ask to save the world in your lives. But I will leave you with one piece of advice before I go, which is really simple. It's just don't go to Duke. And actually, if you do go to Duke, just don't cheer for their basketball team. That's fair. So anyways, with that, thank you.